A magnitude 6.3 earthquake just struck east of the Philippines. Not strong enough to flatten cities, but strong enough to remind us that the earth beneath the Philippine Sea is always moving, and sometimes, it's not just moving, it's warning. This quake wasn't random. It happened along one of the most dangerous tectonic zones in the world, the Philippine Trench, a subduction zone formed by the Pacific Plate diving beneath the Philippine Sea Plate. This trench is deep, volatile, and fully capable of unleashing destruction on a massive scale. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. The region experiences over 100 earthquakes every single day. Some are small, many go unnoticed, but the activity never stops. That constant seismic noise isn't just background, it's the buildup of stress, and over time, that stress can become catastrophic. The Philippine Trench is capable of generating mega-thrust earthquakes that exceed magnitude 8.5. That level of energy release doesn't just shake the ground, it reshapes entire regions. It can lift seafloors, generate tsunamis, and obliterate coastal communities. These are not minor tremors. They are planet-altering events. And when you realize that these tectonic plates have been grinding against each other for centuries, with much of that stress still unreleased, the stakes become impossible to ignore. This isn't speculation. It's how subduction zones work. They lock, they accumulate energy, and then, one day, they snap. What's more alarming is that this trench hasn't had a full margin rupture in recent history, which means it still has that stored energy quietly building beneath the surface. Now, slightly north, and things get even more intense, because there, beneath the Benham Rise, lies something even more intimidating than the trench, a sleeping volcanic giant called the Apalaki caldera. Most people have never heard of it, but Apalaki holds a disturbing title. It's the largest known submarine caldera on Earth. It was created by an eruption of unimaginable scale, a supervolcanic event that released enough energy to collapse the crust of the ocean floor and leave behind a massive volcanic depression. And while this happened millions of years ago, Apalaki is not extinct. It's considered an active system. Underwater caldera collapses are particularly dangerous because they displace enormous volumes of water. That sudden movement can generate devastating tsunamis, reaching coastlines in minutes. And unlike land-based eruptions, these submarine events are harder to detect, giving nearby populations little to no warning. A significant eruption at Apalaki could also send massive amounts of ash and volcanic gases, especially sulfur dioxide, into the atmosphere. That could lead to a volcanic winter, a global temperature drop, disrupted agriculture, food shortages, economic instability. These are known consequences of supervolcanic activity, and Apalaki fits the profile. That eruption would affect everything from ocean circulation to regional fisheries to global trade. And yet, because it's underwater and remote, it remains largely under-monitored. There's no robust early warning system specific to it. No major global focus. But the potential threat is real. Here's where things get more concerning. These two systems, the Philippine Trench and the Apalaki caldera, aren't operating in separate silos. They're both part of the larger Pacific Ring of Fire, a network of interconnected faults, trenches, and volcanoes that wraps around the Pacific Basin. This is the core danger of tectonic and volcanic systems that share a geological neighborhood. They don't exist in isolation. A trigger in one can spark a chain reaction in the other. So, a 6.3 earthquake? It might seem like a routine event, but it's happening in one of the most unstable, overpressurized sections of Earth's crust. It's a region full of unrelieved stress, and it sits next to an underwater supervolcano capable of changing global conditions. Every quake in this area, whether it's minor or major, has to be seen in the context of these larger forces, because the pattern matters. And the pattern says this region is constantly moving, constantly building pressure, and constantly threatening to release that pressure in devastating ways. What complicates things further is just how difficult it is to monitor these systems. The Philippine Trench lies deep in the ocean, making it inaccessible to most land-based seismic tools. Apalaki, even deeper, is located in a vast underwater volcanic plateau. Both sit out of sight, far from land, and mostly out of reach. Monitoring them requires a combination of satellite data, ocean floor sensors, GPS networks, and highly specialized equipment. It's expensive. It's logistically difficult, but it's absolutely necessary, because without continuous monitoring, we won't know. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one, when the next rupture is coming, or if a caldera is starting to inflate. We won't detect magma movement. We won't notice subtle changes in seafloor deformation. And that means we lose valuable time, the kind of time that could be used to evacuate, prepare, or issue alerts. The threat isn't just geological, it's societal. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions have ripple effects on infrastructure, food systems, migration, public health. Coastal communities are particularly vulnerable, especially those with limited access to early warning systems or emergency resources, and that the true rupture could still be ahead. It also speaks to the urgent need for international cooperation, because these geological threats don't recognize borders. A tsunami doesn't stop at a nation's coastline. A volcanic winter doesn't respect airspace. The risks are regional, and the consequences are global. The interconnectedness of these systems means that the monitoring effort needs to be just as interconnected. Shared data, open access, collaborative planning. These aren't optional, they're essential to staying ahead of the next major event. And while geological systems can't be stopped, their impact can be reduced. Through research, through preparation, through communication, the Philippine Trench will continue to grind. Apalaki will continue to rest beneath the waves. And the Ring of Fire will continue to move, in fits and jolts, as it has for millions of years. That's not changing. But what can change is how we respond. Because right now, with every quake, with every tremor, with every undersea rumble, the Earth is talking. It's reminding us of its power, and it's warning us clear as day that the surface we live on is only as calm as the plates below allow it to be. So, if you're watching this, and you've made it this far, you're not just curious. You're informed. You're part of a conversation that more people need to be having. Tap that like button if this breakdown helped you understand what's going on beneath the Philippine Sea. Share this with someone who needs to know what Apalaki really is. Subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our planet. And drop a comment what worries you more, the trench or the caldera. Let's talk about it. Because when the ground moves next, you'll want to know why. The truth is, people don't usually think about what's under the ocean until it's too late. Out of sight, out of mind, right? But under that stretch of blue between Luzon and the Pacific lies a volatile, high-pressure system of geological chaos, just waiting to release centuries of stored energy. And it doesn't take a supercomputer to figure out what happens when that pressure finally lets go. We're talking about one of the most dangerous tectonic environments on the planet, where one plate is actively diving beneath another. It's not peaceful. It's not gradual. It's an unrelenting force that's already proven it can reshape coastlines and devastate populations. And here's the most unnerving part. The Philippine Trench isn't even the only threat. Because right next to it, buried beneath thousands of meters of ocean, is a sleeping volcanic anomaly so massive, scientists are still wrapping their heads around it. The Apalaki caldera isn't just big. It's the biggest, the largest submarine caldera ever identified. And while it's been quiet for millions of years, quiet doesn't mean safe. Quiet means pressure could be building without a single visible sign. When it comes to supervolcanoes, especially underwater, one's silence is never reassuring. It's ominous. This caldera was formed in an eruption of such scale, it left a depression spanning over 150 kilometers wide. That kind of explosion would have ejected unimaginable amounts of magma, ash, and volcanic gas. The kind of eruption that blocks out sunlight, cools the planet, and disrupts the global climate for years. These aren't doomsday fantasies, they're well-documented geological consequences of past supervolcanic eruptions. And if Apalaki were to erupt again, the ripple effects would touch every continent. Not in theory, in reality. Through disrupted weather systems, failed crops, ocean acidification, and widespread food insecurity. But while Apalaki lurks silently beneath the Benham Rise, the Philippine Trench moves daily. That's the difference. The trench is active now. Every quake is another puzzle piece in a much larger seismic picture, a picture scientists are still racing to complete. Each tremor, each jolt, is part of an endless push and pull between tectonic plates, slowly locking and slipping. The 6.3 magnitude quake that just hit isn't an isolated event, it's part of that system in motion. And maybe it's a release valve. Maybe it's relieving pressure, but maybe it's just the prelude. Because here's the pattern. A big trench rupture doesn't come out of nowhere. Often, it's preceded by swarms of smaller quakes. Quiet signs that stress is shifting. And with over 100 earthquakes rattling this region every single day, the only question is, which one sets off the chain reaction? That's why scientists focus so much on stress accumulation. Subduction zones aren't just seismic hotspots, they're time bombs. They absorb pressure for centuries, and when they rupture, the energy release is massive. Catastrophic tsunamis are often the result, not just quakes. And yes, tsunami warnings exist, but they depend on early detection, fast communication, strong infrastructure, things not every region in the Pacific has equally. A major trench quake could send waves toward the eastern Philippines in a matter of minutes. There would be no luxury of time. And if that quake interacts with volcanic systems, if pressure shifts from the fault into the magma chambers below, that's where Apalaki comes back into the picture. The Ring of Fire isn't a series of disconnected hazards, it's an interconnected system. Stress in one segment can influence activity in another. Magma isn't just sitting still, it responds to tectonic pressure. Fault lines don't just crack, they redistribute energy. These aren't just theories. They're observed patterns from some of the world's worst disasters. Think about how quickly everything can change. One underwater quake, one caldera collapse, one shift in stress between plates, and suddenly, an entire region is in chaos. The question isn't whether the Philippine Trench and Apalaki are dangerous. That's a given. The real question is, are we watching closely enough? Because despite the constant seismic activity, despite the volcanic history beneath Benham Rise, the region remains vastly under-monitored. The technology exists. The urgency is there. But the implementation? Incomplete. There aren't enough deep-sea sensors. Not enough GPS stations to measure slow deformation. Not enough investment in ocean-based early warning systems that could detect volcanic gas emissions or undersea ground inflation. Apalaki's potential as a supervolcanic system should be treated as a global risk. But for the most part, it flies under the radar. And that's a dangerous place for a threat of that size to be. We've seen what happens when the world underestimates the ocean. When early warning systems fail or come too late. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami killed over 230,000 people across 14 countries. That quake struck along a subduction zone too. Like the Philippine Trench, it was preceded by smaller tremors. And when the big one hit, most people had no idea what was coming. The Philippines isn't just in a similar position, it's in a more complex one. It's wedged between trenches, volcanoes, and one of the most geologically active zones on the planet. The combination of tectonic strain and potential supervolcanic activity makes it one of the highest risk areas in the Pacific, and yet, it rarely gets the attention it deserves. This isn't about doom and gloom. It's about facts, data, science, and preparedness. If the trench ruptures, it won't be a local disaster, it'll be regional. Possibly even global, depending on how the energy spreads. If Apalaki erupts, the climate effects alone could alter life as we know it for years. These aren't speculative risks. They're backed by decades of geological research, history, and current seismic patterns. The Earth isn't unpredictable because it's mysterious, it's unpredictable Because we're still not listening closely enough. Still not watching the right places. Still treating out of sight like it means out of danger. And here's the kicker. Nature always gives warnings. Whether we choose to pay attention to them is up to us. The 6.3 quake east of the Philippines? That's a warning. Not a disaster. Not yet. But a signal. A tap on the shoulder from a restless planet. Reminding us that pressure is still building. That somewhere, deep beneath the surface, something is still moving. Every earthquake here is part of a story still unfolding. Every tremor a potential turning point. The Philippine Trench is a geological wound that hasn't fully broken open yet. Apalaki is a volcanic scar that could still erupt again, maybe not soon, but maybe not far off either. And between them, a nation, an ocean, and millions of people who need to know what's beneath their feet and what's sleeping beneath their waves. And when you zoom out, when you look at the full scope of what's happening in the Philippine Sea, it stops being a regional issue and becomes something much bigger. This isn't just about earthquakes in one corner of the world. It's about a volatile, dynamic system that could affect economies, ecosystems, even the global climate, all from beneath a stretch of ocean that most people couldn't point to on a map. The Pacific Ring of Fire is notorious for its power, and yet, the eastern edge of the Philippines caught between the Trench and Apalaki might be one of its most underappreciated danger zones. You've got a subduction zone that's capable of snapping with a magnitude 9 rupture, and a caldera underneath Benham rise that could, in the worst-case scenario, darken skies across hemispheres. And yet, we're not paying enough attention. Not as a global community. Not in the way we monitor better-known threats like Yellowstone or the San Andreas Fault. Apalaki should be on that list. The Philippine Trench should be a focus of international risk assessments. Because when these systems go, they don't just shake one island, they reshape the whole game board. The reality is, we're living through a time where science can actually give us early warnings. We can detect changes in seismic patterns. We can track ground deformation, magma movement, gas emissions. But none of that matters if there's no will to fund, expand, and act on what we learn. And let's be honest, when a 6.3 quake strikes near one of the most dangerous subduction zones on Earth, it shouldn't just be a passing headline. It should be a wake-up call, not just for the Philippines, but for everyone living near the Pacific. Because when a trench ruptures or a caldera erupts, borders become meaningless. Tsunamis don't care about coast guards. Ash clouds don't stop at immigration checkpoints. When it hits everyone. We've seen this play out before. We've seen what happens when warnings are ignored, when governments aren't prepared, when people don't know the risks. It's not just a failure of science, it's a failure of storytelling, of communication, of making people care before it's already too late. That's why it matters to keep talking about these things, to pull the threats out of the scientific journals and into public awareness. Because people don't need to understand every geological term, but they do need to know that a trench rupture could send a tsunami barreling toward them in under 30 minutes, or that a massive underwater eruption could lead to food prices doubling because of a global temperature drop. That's the real impact. That's what's at stake. The people living in coastal cities across the Philippines, Japan, Taiwan, Indonesia, this isn't a theoretical future for them. It's daily reality. They're sitting on some of the most geologically unstable land on Earth. And yet, daily life moves on, as if the ground isn't holding secrets, as if the ocean floor isn't capable of reshaping entire regions overnight. So give this video a like if it helped you see the bigger picture. Share it with someone who needs to know what the Philippine Sea is really sitting on. Subscribe to stay ahead of the curve. And let us know in the comments, are we ready for the next great rupture? Or are we just holding our breath, hoping the Earth stays quiet a little while longer?